So just to start, can you please state your name, title, and affiliation?
Yes, I'm Pei-Te Lien. I'm professor of political science, but also Asian American Studies, Feminist Studies, and Black Studies at the University of California, Santa Barbara.
Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about your personal background, so specifically where you're from, what was your home or family life like growing up?
Yes, and Asian American people like to know where I'm really from, and for me it's the same. I was not born in this country. I was born in Taiwan, and I've been raised there until actually college education, and so I entered in the United States to pursue graduate school.
And how were you introduced to the field of political science?
Yes, by accident. So I was an English major in Taiwan, and so that was sort of very desirable discipline at that time. And most people, after graduation, they would come to communications in abroad. And so I did that, mass communication, a master's degree, where I first studied at University of Michigan. But for some personal matters, I decided to get married and have children. I didn't finish my degree. Okay, so years later, when I got divorced, and I actually, as a foreigner, I have no degree actually in the United States, I have to make a living. So that's my best decision, is to return to school. And so I returned to graduate school at that time, University of Florida. But I have to start all over again in the master's degree. So my master's degree is actually mass communication and journalism. And at that time, people know the reason that I returned to graduate school is to get a job. But again, as a foreign person, non-native English speaker, my advisor basically said that it would be difficult for you to try to survive as a journalist in the United States. And he suggested that perhaps you want to look a little bit at the neighboring, location-wise, kind of next building, and which houses sociology and political science. And I was basically just look at their website, decided that somebody called Margaret Conway, who studied political behavior. Very few women actually at that time in the political science discipline. And I decided that maybe I can talk to her and see whether or not she would adopt me. And she did. And that was the best decision for me. And for her, I believe later on, I think that she thinks too.
Where did you attend undergrad?
That was actually in Taiwan, National Taiwan University, so as an English major.
And can you tell us a little bit more about either your undergrad and graduate school experience?
Oh, yes. Actually, I just came from a panel they talked about. I was glad that I grew up in authoritarian society. So I sort of know how people feel about in an oppressive world. In the classrooms, I was never given the opportunity to speak up. Instead, it's just about focusing on taking whatever information that was given you. Now, the benefit, of course, you get really focused, right, on this knowledge, factual knowledge, hopefully, and something that sort of retention, it's about rote memory, right? So we are also very good test takers. So that is my very different learning background as I come to the U.S., eventually become, the professors, and actually in the classroom as a graduate student, I become outspoken in the sense I kind of making up for the opportunity to speak up, because I wasn't given that opportunity earlier before arriving in the United States in the classrooms.
Were you a first-generation scholar?
Actually, if you're asking this question in the context of Taiwan, my parents were actually both came to Taiwan as refugees from China, and therefore they actually got college degree. So at that time, it was actually we consider quite educated people in Taiwan. But then I came to the United States alone, and then, particularly when you get divorced and have two children, actually at that time, it was really difficult because you don't have support. And the worst thing is actually I couldn't actually tell my parents that I got divorced because it was a shame for them. So I do need to, lift myself up. And also, I always tell my children, I'm giving you the good example that you need to study hard, always study, and they did turn out very well academically. And so it was just my entering the field is a little bit different from others.
Did you have any mentors along the way that made an impression on your career, and if so, who?
Yes, in the political science field, that would be Margaret Conway of the University of Florida. right? She was one of the very early political science women who's dedicated to studying political behavior, particularly political participation. And so at the time, with her permission, that I am able to study something that other political scientists are not studying at that time. There was actually a particular group that I didn't find in the textbook in the classroom, that's Asian Americans. And so I decided actually I want to do something on that, that so that other people can actually learn about that, later on.
Thank you. And how would you characterize the political and social environment in the U.S. while you were in undergrad or graduate school? You can also talk about Taiwan as your experience and
right.
involved in social and political activism during those times.
Right. Actually, so even though I'm in Taiwan, but we kind of had to experience the war, the Vietnam War at that time, and also the protests earlier. So I did learn from the television about what the U.S., all these commotions. And later on, when I was in college, actually at that time, I have classmates who were refugees from Vietnam, and I remember specifically that day, April 30th, 1975, when several of my classmates cried because they lost their country. They were from South Vietnam. They had no country to return to. So yes, the political event does have some real impact even in my friendship. And so I have been, even though I was not a political science major, I have been always interested in public affairs and then journalism. I was hoping that maybe I'll do something, but then eventually become research on political behavior. And so I feel like I'm still very lucky to be able to carry whatever that made me passionate about.
Thank you. And can you tell us about your research trajectory? So what was your dissertation topic? What is your current main area of focus? And were there any particular scholars whose work has influenced you throughout your career?
Yes, so I decided that I want to pursue what I didn't see in political science at that time. Therefore, the choice is actually to do something on Asian Americans. And also at that time, because I was English major, then become journalism, student, and so I have been interested in public. What the public think, public opinion, but the method to study that is actually it was political science that helped me, improve on that. How do you survey a large population and representative? It matters so that what you report about what people think can actually reflect what the real world looks like. And so when I said I want to study Asian Americans, and the difficulty in terms of surveying their opinion is that there's none, first of all, and also how do you know that the final population who are willing to talk to you actually represent the others? So that I had to go through survey research. And so I do have not only my own dissertation advisor who actually could not help, but she permitted me to do that. And I was actually have a remote mentor who actually we never really met until years afterward. It was actually a UCLA professor called Don Nakanishi, right? And later on, of course, we have the Don Nakanishi Award to kind of in memory of his passing. But he was very influential. He was very generous, and to help out somebody who just expressed an interest, wanting to study something like other people say that's impossible. And then people, you won't have a job. That's what people are saying. You won't have a job. People don't know about the importance of research, but I said, but that's what I'm wanting to do. Actually, I want to do it for my children. They're Asian Americans. I'm studying that so that I can become a better parent. So that is actually sort of private motivation, actually.
We're shifting gears a little bit here. What does being a political scientist of color mean to you?
That is, of course, I didn't become political science by choice, but I was really lucky in that then I find out also, then I have a niche position. So few people are like me in the profession at that time, and I chose a topic also is considered like a pioneer, and daunted in that going to a new field. So the political, being a woman of color here is just really just being a pioneer, and happened to be an Asian immigrant woman of color. I think many layers of that identity that I just feel like I was able to actually study myself, study my community, study the future generation for my own children. It's all about me surrounding the community and learning myself and help others learn about our experiences. And so I feel like that even though many people would say, yeah, I can see many disadvantages, but I can also see how do I leverage that into something that become a niche position.
And what challenges, if any, have you faced throughout your career, either due to your race, gender, or your chosen field of study?
Yes, I guess we can begin with, so I want to study Asian Americans. And for my dissertation, I actually try to apply for funding. I try to, survey research takes a lot of money, so I try to apply for NSF. And at that time, it was kind of a major reason I didn't get that funding is actually they said that why do we need to spend money on Asian American? Why is it important to study Asian American? Like it's imaginable right now to understand that, but that was indeed the comment. And so I didn't get that. But of course, everything was silver lining, right? I didn't get that. Therefore, I was able to, ask Professor Nakanishi, what can I do? And he actually introduced me to several surveys done by the Los Angeles Times. At that time, it happened to include some Asian Americans and a series of, and so that kind of gave me the opportunity not only to graduate early, because I only need to do secondary analysis, because I have a try and didn't get that, so my community couldn't fault me for not wanting to and try to get money. But then because I actually did have I think good enough of a research proposal, so when I finished and find a job in both a joint position in political science and ethnic studies, I was able to eventually get the NSF money, and which become the nation's eventually one of the nation, actually the nation's first Asian American survey, political survey.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. And in your view, what is necessary in order to further diversify the discipline and make it more equitable and welcoming to scholars of color?
Right. I'm glad that you say further diversify. Definitely, the field has been diversified a lot, because I entered the field in 1995 as assistant professor, like 30 years, right? And so a lot has happened. The association certainly played a very important role, right? We have this, DI program here, inclusive program here. And so in terms of further, it's actually need to be addressing the challenges of the times, that we have an unusual challenge in these tumultuous times, and how do we try to reach out, support those who are struggling. I was wondering about whether or not we could have a kind of mutual aid fund or some kind of emergency fund to help people who are particularly in trouble. So that is the funding side, but it could be some activity doesn't really need money, but it could be about opportunity. Association could take some leadership role in terms of either organizing or supporting things such as teaching, try to help educate. How do you deal with, how do you kind of survive actually the challenges behind you. So there are many people that knows about different ways to do it, but it just, many of us are also in the ivory tower, we don't know. So if we try to engage and learn about others and open up for people to try to chime in and help each other out, I think that's how, usually the way how people survive hard time is try to support each other. And the association could play a facilitating role in that.
Touching on what you're already saying here, in addition to existing diversity, equity, and inclusion programming, what is your advice to associations like APSA or WPSA on how to best support scholars of color as they approach different milestones in their career, so their dissertation completion, tenure promotion, and then career advancement?
Yeah, so this is slightly different because you're talking about professionalization, right? We all want to be part of that profession. But I'm in the field, actually, oftentimes I'm also challenging the profession, in terms of, we kind of, from a critical lens, particularly minorities, I feel like I'm privileged in that I'm able to see something that sort of majority didn't see. I can see, such as I'm immigrant parent, woman, so I can see that I have a hard time to try to survive had it not because of the kind of the family support. I wouldn't be able to pay the tuition. I wouldn't be able to turn down all the TA-ship because I need to focus on studying so that I can graduate early to make an income. So we are, as a minority, we have different life situations. Therefore, we sort of more understanding of the difficulties some people face. And so I appreciate the association actually created all these kind of minority serving, that status committee and whatever, try to help, taking the opinion and advice of different groups. So continuing that great efforts, I hope, and I know we are all in the funding cut situation. Hopefully the association doesn't need to experience anything, but I think these programs are actually very valuable, for your constituencies of the very diversified population. And it is really oftentimes it's the association. We can say this is what we have different publications such as PS on the professional field. How do we do teaching and how do we do service? And sometimes we publish there, in addition to the journals. So sometimes we cite it in our classroom. In my own teaching evaluation, like women of color, some students say, I don't understand your English, right? That is a kind of challenge. And then we can actually cite a PS article and say, look, the actual research shows that minority, women of color, and they do face this kind of downside in challenges in the classroom, and therefore our colleague who are evaluating our tenure case, we can back up with that scholarly research, say this is not me, I'm in a structure and I'm in a society, that sort of put me down, and so they became more understanding of my challenges in not as great an evaluation, but there's a reason, and so the association sort of even play an important role in that. So it's through publication, right? Through the different kind of publication, you get to do that. And so I guess you sort of certainly I know there's some kind of legal defense fund or something that kind of need. Sometimes you have individual cases, sometimes they just need association to be back them up, so that I can count on the sort of support. Sometimes we find resources and other kind of research or alternative funding for them. But it's the association, I think, it's played a very important role, to many people, just more than the association know.
Shifting gears one more time, you have held a number of leadership positions, including at APSA and WPSA. What, in your view, makes a good leader?
A good leader, actually, so I was not born a leader. I was not born the kind of leader that was characterized in the U.S. society, and I never imagined to be a leader. But it was actually, first of all, when I moved across the country, I experienced some life disadvantages that I suddenly realized I am the minority because I was a privileged person. I'm the white, right? With an educated parent. It was the privileged class in my home in origin. But it was when I became a minority, then I realized that I can empathize, and I actually share a lot of concerns with other minorities in this country. So I became a minority, I became minoritized. And so in that process, and I feel like I need to speak up. I need to vote. I need to get into citizenship so I can vote, because if I don't do that, people just they don't. I don't even count. As parent, when they see you as an immigrant, that's my own experience. They just don't even candidate when they're searching, getting the vote. They just don't talk to me. Either assume I don't speak English or because I don't have the vote, and things like that. So I feel like I need to carve out a space for myself. But beginning with seizing the opportunity to volunteer, association did open up opportunity, and I began actually with WPSA because I was naively looking at the call of the for community service, and I thought, they asked me to do something. Okay, I'm going to volunteer. So just that, it just really just began with volunteer work. Eventually, when you volunteer enough, people try to see and try to see that maybe you'll be able to do something. So eventually, kind of climb up the ranks in that way.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your experience with APSA or WPSA conferences? Any stories?
Yes, for the APSA, that is about beginning actually with the two things. One is the related group. There was actually a related group on Asian Pacific American Caucus. The reason why it has that is actually because we were frustrated by our ability to find our papers accepted into the program. Because usually they would say, it's not good enough, but we cannot form a panel for that. Right? Either that you're not good enough or you don't have enough to form a panel. So we know that one benefit of being a related group is actually you have a guaranteed panel space. That was actually our private motivation for Angelique and several other allies to do that. And so yes, association does provide that space, so guaranteed space. That's actually very important. And so and then with that association, the status, right, of the caucus, we were able, of course, to also create networking networking opportunity, particularly for junior scholars and students who were other people were questioning whether or not there's value in terms of studying Asian American. We just tell them that, well, at least you get places to present in the premier association, the meeting, right? And the other thing is the status committee, right? The Asian American Status Committee, right? It's also something several of the pioneer thing that the APSA was able to do, that basically just paying attention to people who are other than the white population, but in the profession, and they recognizing that they have different needs, so we also, I believe, it's also have a panel space, a status committee space. It's more about professional development rather than a scholarly presentation. But that's, of course, is a very equally important part in our professionalization.
Thank you for sharing that. And do you have any advice for junior scholars coming up in the profession now?
The first thing when we have a entering cohort of the graduate student, I always say, please become a APSA member. And I also tell them, for so many years, I mentioned my mentor, Margaret Conway, and I only missed one APSA meeting, actually. And when she noticed, the first, like in the 90s, actually, late 90s, and she realized that I missed that, she scolded me for that. Yes, she said, how can you miss this meeting? If there is only one meeting, that 1 year that you need to attend, that's the APSA meeting. And that's the best advice that I receive, and I would also pass it on. That is really the opportunity. So I thought that's what, tremendous amount of value actually provided by the association in terms of, minority and you don't know anything, you're newcomers, first generation, whatever. And this is the professionalization and a network that you have built up for people who don't feel like originally they belong.
And is there anything else you would like to share with us today?
Well, I really just appreciate the association will value somebody who was like, I was not even born a political scientist, and the first generation, and somehow I got embraced into the service, the association in terms of their. So I serve on the council, and I serve on the status committee, and I also serve on the program co-chair, and so I was able to kind of help shape what the association looked like, and what we all anticipate. What should the discipline be looking for to in terms of scholarship, but also in terms of the directions of our way. What kind of issues that people care about, and that we want people to get exposed to in the annual meeting. And so also I believe John Nakishiyama and also Wallace, we basically have one of the best, I believe, most inclusive annual meeting program at that time in 2002.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That concludes our interview today.